According to the ecological theory, the everyday surroundings children encounter, people, schools, etc., can be classified into their microsystem. Following the microsystem, there is the mesosystem. The mesosystem is when different parts of a person's microsystem become interdependent on each other and help to influence an individual's life. In my video, I will examine when two different microsystems merge and how they create a whole new micro and mesosystem. The family I interviewed has a very unique background. The mother and the father are the first in their family to marry outside of their race. The father is African American and the mother is Filipino. They met while the father was stationed in the Philippines during the Vietnam War. At this time, the mother was only 15 when they met. When the father returned back to the United States, he brought the mother with him. In the father's family, they had a hard time accepting the fact that he didn't marry an African American woman like all his siblings had done. The mother's family was skeptical about her leaving the United States, but they knew she would have a better life in America. They were married by the time the mother was 18 and they had 2 sons together. The 2 sons and the father identify as African American and the mother identifies as Filipino. The father says his family is from Africa, but he doesn't know how many generations back it took for them to get over here. He knows that his ancestors were slaves, so it's many generations of family members that have lived in the United States. However, the mom is the first one in her family to live in the United States. The dad said his side of the family never really interacts with the origin of where they came from because they've been in America for so long. They're American, so they practice American customs and traditions. But the mom had a harder time adjusting to that. When she got here, she would still celebrate some of the holidays that they did back home in the Philippines. But over time, she's adopted the American traditions and what she does here. She does tend to eat the food that she had in her country, and she tries to share them with her sons, but she said that they're picky and they refuse to eat it, which she's not going to force it on them because that's not what she wants. She doesn't want them to resent that, but she also wants them to know where they came from and what their background is. Like I said earlier, they don't have much interaction with their relatives that live in the Philippines, and there is a language barrier there because a lot of them don't speak English, so the mom is translating and then they have to sit there all together. So it's just harder, and so they just don't talk as much. But they do visit their dad's side of the family once a year. But they just don't see eye to eye because, like I said earlier, their microsystem has been different since they've moved to LA and they're away and they have new surroundings and new people to talk to. The mom side of the family obviously still identifies more with their culture of origin since they still live there. And the dad side of the family, what they told me, I wouldn't say it's so much a culture of origin, but more of a religious thing. Like I said earlier, they were like hardcore Christians when the boys were younger, but when the boys got to like 16 or 17, they stopped going to church as much and they let it be an option to the boys because they wanted them to be able to make their own decisions. And that first family reunion when they went back to Alabama and the boys didn't want to go to church on Sunday with the whole family, there was a huge uproar because that has been something that they have always done. They all went to Sunday church as a family, and then they all had their meals together, like a giant meal. And since the family has moved to LA, and they're away from all that influence, they don't really do the same practices as them anymore, and it's causing some conflict between them because the grandma is about to turn 101 in August, they said, and she's very religious. She still goes to church every Sunday, and she's having a really hard time accepting the fact that her grandsons aren't going to carry on this tradition. So I think that causes a lot of stress between the family because the dad wants to do what's right for his sons. He wants them to be able to make their own decisions, but yet he has people in his ear talking to him about how they need to take those boys to church. You're going against everything we believe in, and that does cause a lot of stress within the family. Both the mom and the dad come from big families, and they have a lot of siblings. But since they've been in LA and they've been on their own, just with their two sons, not surrounded by all those people again, when I asked their sons how many kids they wanted to have, they each said they wanted about 2 or 3. And I feel like this will differ their microsystem from the rest of their family because they won't have all the siblings to surround them and help influence their existence and their future, like their cousins and aunts and uncles have had. The boy said when they told their grandmother that they didn't want to have as many children that she had, she was very disappointed in them and worried about the family not living on for many generations to pass. And part of me feels like the reason why she feels like this is from her background and from her ancestors once being slaves. Because as we discussed in class, slaves would have a lot of children in hopes to keep the family connected, and if they were ever to get separated, that they would hopefully try to keep the family together, and some family members would get sold together. So you could definitely see in this instance a big generational gap between the grandsons and their grandmother, because there isn't that constant need for reproducing and survival and to keep the family together and to have a lot of kids to get the work done. And so already their microsystem is different from their grandmother's, but it's also going to be different from their cousins because what they're surrounded with is different than them, because the cousins have multiple brothers and sisters and they're always with their family, but then the brothers back in LA just have each other, and that's what they're used to, and that's been how they've grown up. So that's going to influence their choices of having children in the future. The father makes all the decisions in their family, even though he and the mom both work and they make the same amount of money. And in the past, when it was like the breadwinner would make the decisions because they do that, and now they make the same amount of money, but the dad still makes the decisions. And when I asked them if the kids were ever involved in the decisions, both the parents kind of scoffed. Different because I've always been involved in the decisions I make, but I also had a different background with a single mom, and so we kind of had to consult each other for it. But they said that the dad makes all the big decisions in the family, and the mom has some say in it because she is the mother, but ultimately what the dad says goes. Each of the family members have all experienced discrimination, which is awful that they had to go through that. The mom said that her most memorable experience that she's had was one where she was at a grocery store and she was buying her groceries, and one of her sons stole her debit card, and so she didn't have enough money to pay for it, but the woman behind her in line was just yelling at her saying, "You stupid Asian, you just come here and try to take all of our money and you use all of our taxes." And she was just basically just screaming at her, insulting her in front of the entire store, and she didn't even know the woman. And the mom said that that was the most memorable, but she gets it all the time, especially being a woman too and having her accent. She's been asked if she's a citizen, if people can see her papers, or to go back to where she came from because she's not wanted here. The sons definitely talked more about the discrimination that they have faced, and they said they've been experiencing it their whole life, but after the election and Donald Trump got elected, they have been getting more and more racist comments made towards them. The youngest son was at U of A when Trump got elected, and he said people on campus were yelling at him, telling him to go back to Africa, and that was just so heartbreaking to have to listen to. And the older brother has experienced the same, but he said he was once in a situation where they're at a store, and it was not in the best part of LA, and someone came in with a gun and was like telling everyone to get on the ground, you know what they do with gun robbers, and the the guy who was doing it was white, and so he was on the brother was on the ground, like, listening to what the guy with the gun said, because why wouldn't you listen to what the guy with the gun said? And then the police came, and the guy with the gun ran, and everyone stood up, and the brother got arrested because he was black, and they were saying that he was the one to do it. And the owner of the store, who he said was Asian, it was like one of those little convenience stores, like, said that, oh, he was stealing anyway, so you need to arrest him, even though he wasn't stealing anything. And they also said, both the dad and the two sons said every time they've ever gotten pulled over by a cop, they've had everything checked, they had to get outside of the vehicle, they got searched, they got their vehicle searched, and that's just something that I've never had to deal with, and it's awful that they would have to do that. And the mom said that as a family, how they experience discrimination is, she said when she first came over here and she married her husband, she became a naturalized citizen, but there is a lot of people that were just saying that, oh, you just married him for citizenship, blah, 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 you're taking advantage of our country and the system, and your sons are all going to be damned, and that was, she's like, and that's just haunted her for years. The mom and the dad said both their major concerns for their children is that their children are African American males, and the way that African American males are being treated in this country, they're terrified that every day when they leave the house they could be shot. They don't let them wear hoodies at night, and the boys are 23 and 25 years old, and when they're leaving the house, if they're wearing a hoodie, the mom and the dad make them take it off because they're so terrified of them getting shot. The mom even said, too, that she wants the son to consider adopting a white baby because she's afraid of them bringing in a black baby into this world where they're just being so hated against. And that was just heartbreaking to have to listen to. And they said that was their major concern, was for their kids and their kids, future kids that they're going to have. And they're hoping that things will change in this country so that their children won't have to worry about whether their son is white or black. They would just have to worry about whether he's fed and has a roof over his head. Both the mom and the dad said their families back home, so in the Philippines and Alabama, the roles are very traditional. So the wives stay at home and they cook and they clean and they take care of the children, and the men go to work. But the mom and the dad living in LA, it's expensive to live in LA, so both the parents have to work, and the mom doesn't know how to cook, so the dad cooks and the mom cleans, and both the jobs are split pretty evenly. So this is another instance in which the microsystem is going to be changed for the boys because they are growing up seeing the interaction between their parents, of the mom and the dad both sharing household responsibilities evenly, and those are going to differ from their cousins. I asked the boys this question because I wanted to know what they have observed from their family, and they said that the strengths they see in their family is that they have a good sense of humor, but that their sense of family is really close and their caring for others is really close, and that can go a long way in life. So I do agree that is a strength. Their needs, they said that their family can sometimes argue too much because they're not going to church as much as they should, or they don't want as many kids, and just things are different from the rest of their family that are back down in the South and in the Philippines. The boys both said that they'd also want their parents to have a higher education because they both didn't go to college, and they feel like that would be beneficial to them to do that. And they said the uniqueness of their family is that they're blended from different religions, and both the mom and the dad did things outside of their family's normal routine, like marrying the same race and staying in the country and staying with all their family. So they're still a part of the family that they're in, but they're kind of making their new generation of family that's going to be different from the rest.